Alright, my name is Mitch Ridout. I'm with the Hannibal School CPI Training program. We are going to be going over the non-physical part to try to get this sped up for you guys. First time for me doing this in front of a camera. Usually it's interactive, so bear with me a little bit. I'll do the best I can. We'll get through it as well as we can. Feel free to stop this at any time. You'll have your workbooks out if you go through this. You'll also bring a workbook to the training when we finish it with the physical part and go through that. The post-test, I want to kind of start with that, or excuse me, pre-test. We'll just go over that, and you can go over with me here. The first question is define aggression and violence. How do we define that? So in the workplace of school, it could be anywhere really. How do you define it? What's some characteristics of it? And I'll let you, if you want to pause and think, do that. Aggression, CPI has talked about, can be defined as a behavior that's characterized by vigorous, intense, or hostile actions. Violence it defines as any behavior where force is used to try to injure or abuse another person. So if we think about at times in school where we've been there, we've probably seen some type of aggressive behavior, whether it's verbally or physically. Okay? Which I kind of jumped into the second part there. The number 2 says, what are the 2 types of aggression and violence you may encounter in your job? And that is 1, verbally, and 2, physically. Verbally could be threats, calling you names, a lot of different ways, you know that. Physically could be them physically striking at you with their own body, throwing things at you, objects and different combination thereof. Okay? Number 2 talks about what are the core values that underpin your workplace practice. Okay? CPI has, and I think it's at the top here, to provide the best care, welfare, safety, and security for everyone. And that's really what we want. We want the school to be a safe place where they can learn. Kids, students cannot be educated very well without their needs being met. And one of the most core needs we have is safety. All right? There's the sleep, maybe medication, hunger, and things like that. But we need to feel we're in a safe place to be able to have this. So what are the values that your school has that undermines us to give the best education we have? We want you to be thinking about that, and we want to see how CPI can help with that. The last one is going to list the behaviors of an individual may experience, okay, or you may observe during a typical crisis. And that's going to start from the beginning to the end. CPI has put them into 4 categories that are the most common, and we're going to try to put that up here on the side here. And what that's going to be is the 4 levels are, we'll have kind of the chart, it'll be the left side, right side. The left side will have anxiety, and we're going to define all these a little bit later. The student will start being anxious. The one I talk about that is when you know something's about to happen. We'll break it down a little more. Your spidey senses are going off. It's about to hit the fan. All right? CPI, once you identify when they're in the anxiety level, we are going to be supportive. And we will break that down into what that looks like. The next one is threats. The second one, this is the verbal aspect of CPI. This is when they are verbally, they're threatening, they're refusing, all the different challenges we have with just verbally, not any physical, just verbal. And that breaks down into another little subsection too. When they do that, our response is going to be defensive. And we're going to start setting limits and try to start to take control of that potentially escalating situation. The third level that CPI has recognized is risk. And the risk ones is the physical aspect. We won't get into that in this presentation. We have to be live to do that. So that'll be the second part of the training where we get out and we show how to protect yourself from being hit, kicked, how to get out of a bite, hair pull. Worst case scenario, maybe even have to control the situation by controlling the student at whatever level. And CPI has done some new training lately in the last couple of years and have some different levels of it which is really nice. And the very last one is therapeutic rapport, or excuse me, tension reduction on the side of the student. And that's where they're calming down, they're starting to gain their rationale back, and our response is going to be therapeutic rapport. All right. Number 4, a crisis can result in a traumatic experience for all those involved. True or false? This question I really like. This is one of my favorite ones because this is one you can't get wrong. It's both. All right. Very often it is true. When a student or an individual goes through some type of a crisis, the word itself says there was something kind of scary about that, and it can be very traumatic. All right. They may have said something, done something mean, they may have struck out at you, to someone who you've been the positive person in their life, and now, you know, what are you going to do? Maybe their experience, they think you're going to hate them. It's scary, all right? Crisis also is a point of somewhat loss of control. As we talk about going through these steps, in this one we'll talk about losing a little bit of control in the verbal part, but in the physical part you lose pretty much complete control. And that's scary. Going down the road, if you hit a slick patch and you lose control in your car for just a second, it scares us. So it can be very traumatic, and most of the time it is. But on the flip side, it doesn't have to be. There are some students that just got up on the wrong side of the bed. I like to joke, maybe their bed was against the wall and they came in a bad mood, and they don't care, and they're going to say and do things, and it's not traumatic for them to take a swing at you or call you all kinds of names. All right? The last one, number 5, what is your responsibilities after a crisis event? All right, we have a breakdown that CPI has called the coping. It's an acronym. We'll go through that, but also think about what each of your buildings and administrators wants. There's usually reports to file, making sure you're passing on information, excuse me, that you have filled out all the right paperwork, that everyone is safe, including you, the other students, and the individual. So we're going to start going through this. That's the pre-test.